Immediately, when we think of KFC, we picture an elderly man sporting a white suit with a black string tie, a mustache, and a neatly groomed white beard. Essentially, Colonel Harland David Sanders, the founder and brand champion of KFC, is on our minds. We must not overlook the "it's finger-licking good" chicken either. Very few people are aware of Sanders' inspirational story, despite the fact that he has been the face of KFC for many years. Before transforming the fast food industry as a whole, did you know that Sanders began working at the age of 10? He held a number of positions, including those of a steamboat operator, midwife, insurance salesman, blacksmith, and secretary. It may surprise you to learn that Sanders' franchise model was turned down 1,009 times. Or that Sanders used a pressure cooker to create his own special recipe for fried chicken. Hold on, there's more startling information. Sanders even filed a $122 million lawsuit against KFC's new owners. Let's explore Sanders' fascinating background and learn how he created his delectable real fried chicken recipe. Uncertain beginning. Harland David Sanders was born on a farm near Henryville, Indiana, on September 9, 1890. Wilbur David, his father, began by tending to his 80-acre farm. Sadly, he fell and shattered his leg, which prevented him from working on the farm. He was employed as a butcher afterwards. Margaret Ann Dunleavy, his mother, was a housewife. Among his 3 born children, Sanders was the eldest. Sanders had to deal with his father's passing when he was just 5 years old. His mother had the entire burden of generating money and taking care of the household. His mother started working in a canning industry, peeling tomatoes. The mother even worked at night sewing for local families in order to get a little additional cash. As you may imagine, the mother's intense workload kept her away from the house most of the time. As the eldest, Sanders looked after his siblings and prepared meals for them. In this phase of his life, he became an expert chef. He had no idea that learning to cook would completely transform his life. 10-year-old Sanders started working on a local farm. Even so, he lost his job since he didn't perform his duties and instead spent all of his time with the animals. Sanders' mother remarried William Broadus, a violent man, in 1902, and the family relocated to the suburbs outside of Indianapolis. Sanders' connection with his stepfather was not good. He claimed that algebra is what drove me off and dropped out of 7th grade at the age of 12. He thereafter lived and worked on a nearby farm, managing multiple jobs at the same time. Prior to releasing his well-known fried chicken recipe, Sanders had numerous hardships and had a number of occupations. Sanders moved out of the house when he reached 13 and took a job painting horse carriages. After leaving this position, he returned to working as a farmhand for $15 a month until he was 15 years old. His streetcar company employed uncle assisted him in obtaining a position as a conductor. When Sanders turned 16 in October 1906, he forged his birth certificate and enlisted in the U.S. Army. After that, he served a year in Cuba as a soldier. Even yet, he was honorably dismissed barely a year later. Subsequently, Sanders held positions as a firefighter, insurance salesperson, tire salesperson, riverboat operator, midwife, and secretary. Yes, if we put his experiences on a resume, any employer would be willing to hire him. Sanders married Josephine King on his 18th birthday. Margaret, Harland Jr., and Mildred were their 3 children. Now that he had to take care of his wife and kids, he decided to take a more respectable and steady career. He started his legal career in Little Rock and stayed there for 3 years. Even yet, his reputation was ruined when he got into a fight with one of his own clients in court, ending his legal career. After that, he was employed by the railroad, but he was let go. Josephine and his wife became enraged upon learning about this. Sanders' wife chose to divorce him since he was always shifting jobs. She returned to her parents' home with their 3 children. This experience discouraged Sanders. He was unable to deal with losing his family and his work. When his children went outside to play, Dad made the decision to abduct them and take them home. Sanders proceeded to his wife's house, where he hid in the forest until his children came out. By some miracle, he made the decision to talk to his father-in-law at the very last minute. He reconciled with his spouse and kids after speaking with his father-in-law. Finger-licking good, that is. At the age of 40, Sanders took a job in 1930 and managed a Shell gas station in North Corbin, Kentucky. Sanders made the decision to put his culinary skills to use because many tourists were constantly asking him where they could eat. From the back room, he prepared meals for his patrons. He turned the storage area into a tiny cafe, serving hot biscuits, steaks, ham, string beans, and most significantly, fried chicken. His delicious meals quickly gained a lot of popularity among tourists. He was given the title of Colonel by Kentucky Governor Ruby Laffoon in 1935 as a thank you for his culinary contributions to the state. When culinary writer Duncan Hines included Sanders' restaurant in Adventures in Good Eating, his guide to eateries around the United States. In 1939, the establishment's reputation increased even further. Sanders opened a motel in Asheville, North Carolina in July 1939. But in November 1939, a fire finally destroyed it. Despite this, Sanders continued. He kept serving food and constructed a restaurant with 140 seats. 50 years old in July 1940, Sanders made the decision to alter his fried chicken recipe. The fried chicken took a long time to cook at first, roughly 30 to 35 minutes. Pressure cookers were starting to appear on the market at that time. Sanders tried cooking chicken in it despite the fact that it was intended for cooking vegetables. He experimented a lot before figuring out how to cook chicken in only 8 or 9 minutes. Sanders created a special spice mixture he named his secret blend of 11 herbs and spices to enhance the flavor of the chicken. Sales of his fried chicken increased quickly as a result of its huge success. Sanders separated from his spouse Josephine in 1947. He got married to Claudia Leddington in 1949. Sanders, who is 65 years old, made the decision to use a franchise system. He would provide his chicken to other eateries to sell, keeping 4 cents from each sale. So he packed up his Ford 1946, loaded it with pressure cookers and his special recipe, and set out to find possible franchisee restaurants across the country. He would persuade the proprietors of the eatery to prepare the chicken for his staff. He would cook for the patrons for a few days if the staff enjoyed the chicken, with the intention of getting the restaurant owner to ask for his franchise model. In order to find a restaurant that would serve his chicken, Sanders was forced to spend countless nights in the automobiles. After being turned down 1,009 times, Bernie finally received his big break in 1952 when South Lake, Utah's Pete Harmon agreed to sell Sanders chicken. Pete is credited for creating the well-known KFC slogan, "It's finger-lickin' good." In the first year that Pete started selling Sanders chicken, his sales climbed by 3 times. After this enormous accomplishment, a lot of people began contacting Sanders in order to obtain franchise rights. Sanders did not provide franchises the precise formula. Rather, he delivered the spice already prepared. He had franchised more than 600 locations in the US and Canada by the end of 1963. Sanders sold his business. Jack C. Massey and lawyer John Yee Brown Jr., both 29 years old, were interested in purchasing Sanders' company. Sanders turned down the offer because he handled his company like a kid. Even still, it took weeks for Brown and Massey to persuade Sanders to sell his company. Sanders, at 73, sold his business for $2 million in 1964, but there was a catch. The requirement was that John uphold the strictest standards for food safety and never alter the chicken recipe. John consented to this requirement in exchange for Sanders receiving a lifetime salary of $40,000, which was eventually increased to $75,000, majority ownership of KFC's franchisees in Canada, and the continued role of advisor and brand ambassador for the business. Sanders and the new KFC owners are in a lawsuit. John sold the business to the enormous food conglomerate Hubeling in 1971. In contrast to John, the new proprietors altered the recipe since they thought the previous one was costly and difficult to prepare. They swapped it out for a simpler, more approachable formula. Sanders was incensed after tasting the new recipe. In honor of his late wife, Claudia Sanders, the Colonel's Lady Dinner House, he launched a rival eatery. Sanders was sued by KFC's new owners for launching a second location under his own name. Sanders filed a lawsuit against the new owners as payback for using his brand improperly to promote goods he did not create. Sanders sought payment in the amount of $122 million. After the matter was resolved, Sanders was given $1 million. Claudia Sanders' Dinner House was the new name he gave to his rival eatery. This eatery is still open for business in Shelbyville, Kentucky. At the age of 90, Colonel passed away in Louisville, Kentucky on December 16 from pneumonia. If you enjoyed uncovering this intriguing piece of fast food history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos. We'd love to hear your thoughts and any interesting stories you might have about KFC, so drop a comment below.